Lamar Jackson has quickly become the standard for quarterback comparisons over his time in the NFL, especially around draft time when a lot of young quarterbacks are trying to come into the league and make their mark. But sometimes his name gets thrown around a little too loosely, and that happened again with Browns general manager Andrew Berry. We talk about his comments, the Ravens losing a key defender to a conference rival, and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens. We are your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, and I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, thank you so much for being here on this Purple Friday, the last one before the draft starts up, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day as well, free and available for you on all podcasting platforms. So if you prefer to watch our content in video form, you can hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. If you prefer to listen to our content in audio form, you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. It's the same show, both audio and video, so you're not missing out on anything either which way. We bring you daily Ravens coverage. We have bonus episodes sometimes on the weekends, and of course, we're going to have plenty of draft coverage coming your way next week. Here with me today, it is Sam Njoku of the Ravens Talk podcast. And Sam, it's crazy to think, I've been saying it for essentially the last 6 weeks. Oh, we're getting closer. We're getting closer. We are less than a week away from this draft kicking off. And for the Ravens, so many ways they could go, so many prospects they could end up with, so many picks they have, and so many storylines for this Ravens team.
Oh, man, I'm so excited. This draft is getting ever so close. I've been diving in with my big board, trying to figure out exactly where the Ravens can go. It's definitely a great time if you're a Ravens fan, and definitely a great time if you're a Ravens fan, strictly because there's so many picks the Ravens can go after because they have such a loaded roster. They can do pretty much whatever they want.
The way this draft class is structured, and Sam, I'm curious of your thoughts here before I get into our topic on Lamar Jackson, is it's a little different than the last couple of seasons, where I think you have a couple of star guys at the top of the draft, but then I think the star power evaporates pretty quickly, but that doesn't mean there aren't quality players. I think that from rounds 1 through 4, you can get guys who could maybe start for you or help you. I think it's a deep class, not in the way of stars, but in the way of key contributors that could just be solid NFL guys for 5, 7, 9 seasons. I think that's where with Baltimore, they have 3 top 100 picks currently. You look at their pick at 27, there could be multiple players that fall that they might say, man, this is a tough choice because they could go in so many different directions.
And that's really the Ravens' way. I mean, it's been like that for years for them. As you mentioned, this is one of those few years where the Ravens are loaded. They have superstars up and down the roster. So you don't necessarily need a superstar, but the coaching staff they have, you just get a guy that's green that you can coach up. And in a couple of years, he's one of the best players in the league. So, yeah, the Ravens have a lot of decisions, a lot of directions that can go with a player that will fall for them at 27. But it's a good problem to have when you're a team that's looking to hoist the Lombardi trophy.
Yeah, and again, the way the Ravens offseason went, they didn't really lose anybody that I personally am losing sleep over. I would say Michael Pierce was probably their biggest loss, and they lost him by way of retirement. Obviously, Brandon Stevens, I think people might be gaining sleep for the Ravens losing Brandon Stevens. Patrick McCary was obviously, I think, their second biggest free agent loss, but they have guys waiting in the wings. So Baltimore, they've given themselves positional freedom with the re-signing of Ronnie Stanley. And that's, like you said, Sam, the Ravens' way of taking best player available, letting a guy fall to you. It's helped the Ravens construct a really consistent roster year in and year out. Now, a team that has not had as consistent of a roster over the course of their franchise history is the Cleveland Browns, who they've been going through it, Sam. We can call it like it is. They've been going through it over the course of, coming back in the league. Obviously, there is some controversy in Cleveland with the Ravens and how that all went down. But the Browns have been looking for a quarterback for a long time. They had one in Baker Mayfield, although now we know that all went awry, and he is now tearing it up in Tampa Bay. Deshaun Watson comes in. Everybody could have predicted that was going to go the way that it did. It was a horrible move on so many different fronts. Cleveland now is the second overall pick in the draft, but steam has been dying down about them taking Shedeur Sanders. It's more so leaned into Travis Hunter, maybe Abdul Carter. But that doesn't mean a quarterback won't be taken early. One guy they've been linked to is Jalen Milroe. Milroe grew up as a Ravens fan. He's been very vocal about that. He's a fan of Lamar Jackson. Andrew Berry was talking about Jalen Milroe during a press conference, and he said, quote, he's got rare physical talent. When he gets in the NFL, he may be the only quarterback who's faster than Lamar. Don't tell Lamar I said that, please. And everyone was like, oh, ha, ha, ha. My face was, ha, ha. Stop. Don't do that. Don't do that. The comment itself was not disrespectful, right? That I want to lay it out first like this. The comment itself was not disrespectful. I don't think Andrew Berry was taking a shot. I don't think he was trying to like make fun of Lamar. It was none of that. It actually was more so paying homage to Lamar and how good he has become. But Sam, when are we going to take Lamar Jackson out of these conversations? Jalen Milroe and Lamar Jackson were two different players in college. Obviously, Jalen Milroe does have a lot of physical talent. You know, he's going to rely on a lot of different things in the NFL, but that's different from Lamar Jackson. Like, I feel like if you're going to make a quarterback comparison, Lamar's graduated from those conversations. And I just think that people see the athleticism and they're like, oh, Lamar Jackson. And, you know, they don't really look at anything else where it's, you know, even here, like his college tenure has been washed over. Like, oh, Lamar was really raw as a passer coming out and like he really couldn't throw. Lamar won the Heisman throwing for like 3,000 plus yards and rushing for another, 1,500 or whatever it was. Lamar didn't like rush for 5,000 yards and throw for 1,000. Like Lamar has been a good thrower of the football. Yes, he needed to refine some stuff coming out of Louisville. That was no secret. But I just think that when you're trying to compare these young quarterbacks to Lamar Jackson, one, it's just not fair to the young quarterback because that's already a lofty thing. And then two, Lamar's just good enough at this point because we don't hear those comparisons about Pat Mahomes. I mean, Josh Allen, you hear it sometimes, but not as much. Those elite echelon upper tier quarterbacks today in this league, feels like Lamar's really the only one that gets that comparison.
Yeah, and to your point, I don't want to bash him too much because I understand he was trying to give him a compliment, but there's more to Lamar Jackson than the speed. I don't think it's the speed that makes him special. A better comparison probably will be Justin Fields, maybe a Dwayne Haskins, you know, somebody along those lines for Milroe. And I do like Milroe's game, but yeah, Lamar Jackson is a completely different beast. And to your point, in Louisville, he was an excellent passer of the football, what's helped him win the Heisman. What makes Lamar Jackson special is his anticipation, his ability to have pre-snap reads that help him post-snap. So all of those things make Lamar Jackson special. I don't know if Milroe has that in his game yet. But I will say this, that, you know, the comparisons are not going to stop. You know, we talked about it before the recording. It's not going to stop. I mean, Lamar Jackson is 1-on-1. He's a 2-time MVP. Likely should have been a 3-time MVP. So obviously, people are going to have those comparisons, and everybody is going to want to look for a quarterback to compete or compare to Lamar to help the franchise the way Lamar's helped the Baltimore Ravens franchise. The simple answer to that is it's not going to happen. He's one of one. I mean, not Michael Vick, not Milroe, not anyone out here has really played to the level of Lamar Jackson as far as his ability both throwing and running the football. So I hope the Browns get their guy one day eventually for their sake, for the Browns' sake, because they need a guy, but I don't know if Milroe's that guy yet, and that's no knock on him. I think he can still be a great quarterback, but to have him compared to Lamar Jackson in any facet, even if it is speed and a one shot towards that end, I think that's misguided, and I don't know if the Browns fans are going to be very happy with the results if they think that he's going to be that Lamar Jackson.
Sam, you probably did homework on that 2018 quarterback class, all those guys coming out of the draft, and Lamar Jackson. I mean, for a guy that did need some refinement, look, every young player needs refinement in some aspect of their game. That's just the nature of the beast, you know. Patrick Mahomes wasn't Patrick Mahomes overnight. Lamar wasn't Lamar overnight. Tom Brady wasn't Tom Brady overnight. Some guys, you know, as rookies, as second-year guys, they do step up, and, you know, that ascension is quick. For other guys, it takes longer. But I feel like with Lamar Jackson, it was always going to be a team needs to believe in him. And it's not, you know, I've talked about this and other people have talked about it too. It's not as easy as people think to just, you know, draft one of these guys, any quarterback, and just say, oh, he's going to fit right into our system. You have to believe in that guy. You have to build a system around that guy. It's not just like plop the guy down with the pieces you have and all of a sudden, oh, yeah, everything's going to work out. The Ravens spent so much time deliberating, you know, did they want Lamar Jackson or not? And their end answer was yes, and we're going to commit everything we can to build this roster around him. Not just plop Lamar Jackson in the middle of what was already existing and say, here you go figure it out. And that's what teams sometimes do. And more often than not all the time, more often than not, that is the situation where the quarterbacks fail. And so you could even talk about Josh Allen. It's the same way where he needed a place where the team would go all in on him. The Bills did that. It is situational. Cleveland did not do that with Baker Mayfield. And we now see what a team in Tampa Bay has done with Baker Mayfield. So that's my thing here is, look, I think Jalen Milroe has a ton of upside. All these quarterbacks do. But it has to be the right situation. And I do commend the Ravens, even though would have probably liked them to get Lamar number one wide receiver a little sooner than they have, maybe trade for a guy. I think overall they have committed so much to building this team around him.
That's very well said, and that's exactly what it is. I think Lamar Jackson, a lot of reasons why teams didn't draft him as early as he probably should have been drafted is because a lot of these coaches want their players to fit into their system and not the other way around. The Ravens are one of the first teams and only teams really, even to this day, that have really taken the approach of, okay, we like this guy, we like his skill set, we know what he did in college. How do we help translate that game in college to the NFL? And that's what the Ravens did. They did a great job of it. We saw it, the maturation of the system throughout the years, especially the early years with Greg Roman, what they did to get him acclimated to the pro level and get him ready to be the quarterback that he is today. And yeah, we wish he got a number one wide receiver early on. I think that would have helped mature him a little faster to the guy that we see today. But to the Ravens' credit, they have done a masterful job of building around their quarterback. And it's a shame they haven't won a championship yet because they deserve it, because they're one of the few teams that actually believe in the player and not just the coaches. And I think that's will go along with it to these other coaches in the future with a guy like Milroe, with a guy like Jackson Dart, even a Cam Ward, that they'll have to fit the quarterback into what he did in college well and help translate that to the pro level.
I think either which way, the Ravens still should be favored in the division. And, that's until Pittsburgh figures out their quarterback position, Cincinnati figures out their defense, and Cleveland figures out everything. I don't really know what's going on over there. But I think for now, look, the storyline, Sam, is no team has won the AFC North 3 times in a row. Baltimore has won it twice. They'll be going for that feat this season. Hopefully they can be the first team to do it, but they'll be doing so without a key defender from last year's team because the Ravens have officially lost him to a conference rival. So coming up, we'll talk about who it is, what team he went to, what it means for the Ravens. Stay tuned. We got a lot coming your way on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. And if you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Plus, posting your job is free and simple. Within a day, you have multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. One more time, that's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku still talking Ravens football with you 6 days away from the start of the 2025 NFL Draft. We have plenty of draft stuff coming your way in the final part of the show. We'll go over who my pick was in the big Locked On NFL mock draft. And I know Sam has his opinions on it, so you want to stay tuned for that. But let's first, Sam, start off with the news of yesterday is the Ravens lost a key defender in Tre'Davious White. He goes to the Buffalo Bills on a 1-year deal worth up to $6.8 million. Now, you might be thinking, Kevin, what do you mean Trey White's a key defender? What are you talking about? Trey White, in limited opportunities, gave the Ravens really solid snaps. And while I'm not talking about, is he a Marlon Humphrey type player? Is he going to be playing Nate Wiggins type snaps? No, of course not. But as a solid depth piece, even with Chidobe Awuzie, I would not have been opposed to the Ravens bringing Trey White back, especially considering you have some unknowns like Jalen Armour-Davis. And who knows what the corner position is going to look like in the draft for Baltimore if they decide to go with multiple guys or just pick one early or even late. But the incentives of up to $6.8 million, Sam, I feel like to me, that's a lot. I don't know what those are, if they're unlikely to be earned or if they're likely to be earned. But I got to give Trey White credit. There was not a lot of expectations from you at Trey White. He came in, a couple of really solid snaps on George Pickens, where he had pass breakups. He wasn't a liability for the most part. Had a really bad call go against him in that divisional round game against Buffalo, which was ridiculous. Yeah. I thought that Trey White was a really solid Raven, even if it really wasn't for that long or he didn't play that many snaps. Yeah,
it was just a testament to, again, the front office of the Ravens to be able to get a guy like that who played very well considering he came in at the middle of the season. He didn't have a lot of opportunity to really absorb the defense. I think a good offseason with the Ravens, with this defense and the versatility that sometimes they're commanded of their DBs would have really helped elevate his game to the next level. So I think the Trey White loss is significant enough to talk about for sure. I think that him bringing in and going to Buffalo with that contract, I think it really priced him out, especially considering what the Ravens were able to get for Awuzie. But I think Trey White's a great piece. I think if given the opportunity, he can be a solid starting corner in this league. And I think that's the plan that the Bills have for him we'll see what happens during the offseason and throughout the draft and what the Bills decide to do on their end. But for the Ravens, I think, yeah, it's a chance for them to get better with the secondary piece like Trey White. But now they have to enter the draft hoping to fill that role somewhere within the middle of the rounds, maybe even the first round if they were able to draft up. But yeah, I think Trey White was a great piece. And I think if you're underestimating his loss, you're going to be a little hard pressed to, convince me otherwise. I think Trey White was definitely a good piece. It's not a crazy loss, but in all amounts, but he was a talent, and I think that he's going to be missed in the locker room.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to make this sound like the Ravens lost Kyle Hamilton, right? It's not one of those moves. Definitely not in the same stratosphere. But I do think that as a depth piece, he was a solid player that you could have relied on. And I felt like if, speaking of last year, Brandon Stevens, I mean, there were calls to start Trey White over Brandon Stevens. Like, that's how bad it got for Stevens. And I know you were kind of leading that charge. But, I mean, that's what Trey White showed you in limited snaps. And also, that's just how bad Stevens was. But regardless, I think the Ravens will end up missing Trey White a tiny bit. But I think the signing of Chidobe Awuzie does kind of does soften that blow. So let's continue that conversation. Chidobe Awuzie versus Trey White. Who do you like better, and who do you think you would have preferred to have on the roster?
If the contracts were the same, I think I'd rather have Trey White, to be honest with you, just because he's a little more familiar with the defense, obviously, and he's proven more over the last couple of years. I think the injury last year really, hampered his ability to play football to the level at which he expects. And, I would just like to see a little more from Trey White in this defense. I think Awuzie still has the potential to be a good corner. I would love for the Ravens to try and bring in another corner. There's some corners, veteran corners in the open market that are available for trade. The Ravens may be able to make a move for that. I know that's very, unlikely given the salary cap space and the demand that will probably be warranted for those players. But, the Ravens still have some moves to make. I still like Trey White a little bit more, but Awuzie does have a skill set that is desired, and let's see what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for what it is worth, Trey White was someone that, gave you different options, but I think Chidobe Awuzie is still someone that if he can get back to the level he was playing at in Cincinnati, which again, he's had a lot of injuries since then, the torn ACL, we're very familiar with Chidobe Awuzie. Sam, you played in Cincinnati for those years and was very good until he tore his ACL. But I think in a lesser role, like for Trey White in Buffalo, what is his role supposed to be? Is he supposed to start for them? What is he? What's he looking at role-wise? I think that's another really important piece of this entire equation. But now you kind of look at, and this is going off a little bit, but Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, I guess Cincinnati in that conversation if you want. The AFC is getting stronger in ways. I think people think that Kansas City might be falling off a little bit because they're just getting older and they've lost some pieces over the last handful of seasons. Feels like Baltimore, Buffalo, they're knocking on the door with Kansas City. I'm going to take Cincinnati out again. We're just going to take them out. Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore. Rank those three right now.
Baltimore's number one. It would be a little bit biased, but I think that the Ravens last year were the best of the three. They fell short, but they still have the roster, even currently right now. I'll put, I like Kansas City at 2. I still think Kansas City has the quarterback. I think a lot of was made of what happened with the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. You got to remember the Chiefs are starting a left guard at tackle in the Super Bowl, so a lot of those pass rushes against Kansas City was, with the weakened line. So I think, and this is under the assumption that the Chiefs make moves with the offensive line throughout the draft. So that's my thought process. Right now, currently with the roster, I think the Bills have it at 2. But I'm just assuming that the Chiefs make a move at offensive line in the first 3 rounds. And then the Bills are right there at 3. But it's really 2A, 2B with those two teams. But I still think the Ravens are the top team in the league. Well, not the league. I think the Eagles still got it. In the AFC for sure, I think the Ravens are still the top team in the AFC. And then the Chiefs and Bills are fighting for that 2 spot. Will it matter come season time? Now that the Ravens are losing to the Raiders and Browns, the seeding will be a factor as where this Ravens team go next year. But right now with this roster, the Ravens are clearly the best team in the AFC.
Let's wrap up the corner conversation because I think you look at the corner room right now. We know that Trey White is not going to be back. Yeah, Marlon, Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, Chidobe Awuzie, TJ Tampa, Jalen Armour Davis as your 5 guys right now. with Trey White not being back, how do you expect the Ravens to address the corner position? Not that I think Trey White was making or breaking their draft strategy there, but now that you know that that veteran option is not available and there are still a couple of guys, but I would have preferred to probably have Trey White over most of them. Do you think a corner is a day one priority depending on who falls, or do you think they might wait a little bit in day 2 or day 3?
I think there's only really the top 2 corners in this draft that you can really consider as an option as far as going with the number 1 first round draft pick. TJ Tampa is a guy that a lot of fans are talking about. You know, we really liked him coming out of college in this draft. Not a lot of action, even though Brandon Stevens was, you know, the sore spot of this defense. So that is a head scratcher in terms of where he's really at in terms of ability. But you hope within the offseason that he gets a little better. That's the X factor of the secondary. Other than that, I think they really do need to look outside for another veteran corner. I would really like it if the Ravens brought in another veteran corner. We've talked about Jair Alexander forever. Not a lot of noise with Alexander the last couple of weeks. The Packers, from what I understand, are still holding fast for a trade. They don't want to cut him. A lot of teams are inquiring, but they're hoping that they do cut him before making a move for him because of that contract and Alexander's unwillingness to really negotiate his contract to fit the cap of these teams. So I would really like it if the Ravens brought in another veteran corner. I think they might do so, maybe not to the extent of a Jalen Ramsey or Jair, but certainly there are other corners out there potentially that could be of solution to them. But, you know, when you get to the second and third round of this draft, there are some viable corners out there that you can, you know, teach up and get ready for the game. But I'm just concerned about overall communication skills. It was definitely a big factor of why the Ravens struggled early in the season last year. And I don't know if I'm ready for a rookie corner. Even though Nate Wiggins is amazing, he's a dime a dozen, I think. I think he's one of a kind. I don't know if you can really count on that for the Ravens in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't even talk about Roger Rosengarten of like, man, rookie tackles don't usually work out that way either. So they did their homework. Oh, yeah. And for Baltimore, you get 2 rookies contributing like that consistently and being that good. Man, it speaks to the Ravens and what they've been able to do as an organization in the draft. And coming up, we'll be talking about my pick from the Locked On NFL mock draft that we did. I know Sam has his thoughts on it. I'm excited to hear them. Stay tuned. We got plenty coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your pair controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports, College Football 25, to Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus Max, and more. And this gives you so many great entertainment choices. You really just can't go wrong whatsoever with this. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Back, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Sam Njoku. We're talking Ravens football, as we always do here on Locked On Ravens. Thank you to everybody again for tuning in, whether you're an everyday or a first-time listener or somewhere in the middle. Thank you for tuning in and for your support. Hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form as well. Sam, 27th overall. The Ravens have had it twice in their franchise history. Jimmy Smith was one. Rashod Bateman was the other. I'd say a pretty solid track record with that selection. So Baltimore has another opportunity to make an impact in the first round. As we've mentioned, Baltimore didn't really do a ton this offseason, but they didn't really have to because a lot of their core guys stayed. Now, I mentioned that we were going to talk about my pick, but I literally just thought of this right now. Eric DeCosta made some comments about Mark Andrews during his pre-draft press conference. They did not inspire a lot of confidence with people that he was going to be on the roster after the draft ends. We know that the Ravens had that bonus go through. Instead of $11 million in savings, it would be $7 million in savings. That $4 million does not come off the books, even if Andrews is traded. Mike Garafolo was reported that he was available at the start of the new league year, but the Ravens pulled him back because they didn't get what they wanted. You've talked about what you've heard as well. Where are you on the Mark Andrews situation? Because it feels like it's just flip-flopping in terms of whether the prediction is Andrews stays or Andrews goes.
Yeah, I know. A lot of Ravens fans have been getting at me about my prediction about Mark Andrews, and I've been trying to tell you guys, Andrews has been available for trade since the end of the postseason, and the Ravens have been wanting to get a certain type of value for Mark Andrews, and they haven't received it as of yet. So they ate the $4 million a bonus, and a lot of people thought, oh well, they ate the bonus, so that means that Andrews is no longer available, and that is not the case. Andrews is still a viable trade option for a team that's looking for a tight end. And it's just going to be a matter of getting into the draft and seeing if these tight end hungry teams fail to acquire these top talents. And I think Tyler Warren's the number one tight end available. If there's a team who wants Warren and if somebody swoops up and get him, then teams are often looking elsewhere for that tight end help for your quarterback hungry, maybe young quarterback who, need a little bit of extra in terms of weaponry. So I would say the draft is a very good time for the Ravens to sit back and decide whether or not they want to get rid of, not get rid of, that's a bad word, but to deal Mark Andrews. And eating the $4 million cap is really a testament to the respect they have for Andrews. They're willing to give him that $4 million bonus because, quite frankly, he deserves the $4 million bonus, and he can get traded and they'll still feel okay about it as long as the value is correct. So my thought process, I think he does get traded during this draft. I think there's going to be a team that's going to be looking for a tight end and doesn't get him. It's really going to be a matter of what are the Ravens willing to accept for Mark Andrews? Are they willing to accept the 5th rounder or 4th rounder for Mark Andrews? Will they really need a day 2 pick, which is what I'm hearing they're looking for Mark Andrews? Is there a team out there that's willing to give it? And if they are willing to take it, our team's going to be asking for a little bit more as well to compensate the loss of that draft pick. So, yeah, a lot of things in the momentums. If I was a betting guy, I would say Mark Andrews likely is traded just because, again, we talked about it for weeks. 3 tight ends, no contracts for either of them. You get rid of Andrews, you get to focus on extending Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar, getting maybe another tight end in this draft. There's a couple of decent tight ends you can find in here. Not as deep of a tight end room as previous drafts, but definitely some talent out there for you to get and expand your tight end room, which the Ravens are very good at. There's one team I will say, find me a tight end. Call the Ravens. They're going to find a tight end. They do it every year. So I think Andrews is likely gone. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets traded, but also the Ravens are stubborn enough where, hey, if you're going to offer me a 6th rounder for Mark Andrews, we're going to keep him and we'll make it work somehow. But I think the obvious choice would be for the Ravens to move on from Andrews and get some compensation to build this roster, make it a little younger and get ready for the future.
Yeah. The Ravens are operating from a position of strength right here. It's not like they are desperate to move him. If push came to shove and they do keep him, they get a year of a still elite tight end, in my opinion. I know some people only look at that Buffalo game. I mean, look, the playoffs have not been up to his regular season standard. We know that.
Yes.
But he still is a top 5 tight end, in my opinion. You get that production for a year, and then he walks, and you probably get a 4th round comp pick anyway for Mark Andrews. So you're like, why would you trade him for anything less than a 4th or anything less than a 5th? And so obviously we don't know if he's going to get traded or not. But if he does get moved, I probably wouldn't do it for anything less than a 3rd personally. I just feel like a day 2 pick is probably where they are looking for. And if that's the case, I don't blame them because either which way, I think the Ravens win. It's either you move off of Andrews, Isaiah Likely can step in and you get a very top 100 pick, which will help in this draft class, or you keep Mark Andrews for the season, you get a pick anyway at the end of the year. So that to me is an intriguing situation. Again, Eric DeCosta's comments certainly raised some eyebrows about just how non-committal he was. And, when you hear, he's been a great player for us. I love and respect Mark. That's when you're like, yeah. I don't know about that's what you say to somebody before you move on.
That's the case. I'm telling you.
That could be what happens here. But again, we're not going to know probably until draft night. That might be a situation where even on day 2 of the draft, a move happens where you're right. Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland, if those 2 guys go off the board, I've seen both guys go in the top 15 in some cases. Maybe a team like the Chargers turns around to Baltimore and says, well, man, that was our entire strategy. Now we need a tight end. All right, fine. We'll give you what you want. So a lot of situations that happen with Mark Andrews. Here's a situation that did happen, Sam. Locked on NFL mock draft. I was on the board at 27. The Eagles jumped me at 26 to take Michael Williams out of Georgia. Malachi Starks was gone. A lot of solid players off the board. I took Nicky Manwari, safety out of South Carolina. I know that there are going to be some questions about his fit in this defense with Kyle Hamilton already there. Is there better positional value, maybe at the edge position with a James Pierce or Donovan Izaraku? Do you take a Derrick Harmon if he's on the board or Walter Nolan? even the corners, like you mentioned, is Jahdae Barrett an option if he falls to 27, or Will Johnson if he falls due to medicals? I ended up going with Nicky Manwari. Absolutely insane combine for his size. It was one of the best we've ever seen. His RAS score, I think, ranked first out of like 1,000+ players. He is uber athletic. He's 6'2", 6'3", 220 pounds, ran a 4.3, 840. I'll ask you, how did you like my pick? How do you like it? And do you feel like that's the best course of action for the Ravens to take, depending on how the board falls?
No, I'm a big Malachi Starks guy, and in your draft, Malachi Starks wasn't available, so that's already a check for me in that regard. I think Nick is a great athlete. I would love for them, and I talked about this on your show for weeks, I would love for them to address the safety situation. So a couple of things. I think the notion that Kyle Hamilton and Nick and Manwari can't be in the same field at the same time because they're very similar, I think you guys are missing the point about what Kyle Hamilton is. Kyle Hamilton naturally is a deep safety. He's athletic enough and gifted enough as a guy that could be at a line of scrimmage where the Ravens used him in that regard. But, you know, at Notre Dame, he was a deep safety. He was out there making plays out there trying to prevent, you know, big plays on the opposing offense. So I think the fact that, you know, you bringing in Nick doesn't really nullify what makes Kyle Hamilton special. You can keep Kyle Hamilton back there and then convert Nick into what Kyle Hamilton has been the last couple of seasons, not lose a beat, or even switch off as you get more comfortable with Nick back there. But I think the pick overall, you know, I would rather go with a guy like Derrick Harmon. And I like Derrick Harmon a lot as a disruptor. You know, I talk about disruption all the time. Jalen Carter, a disruptor for the Eagles, you know. So I would probably go that route. But again, you can't go wrong with a safety like that. So as long as you're not skipping on the Malachi Starks, who's my number one guy, I'm okay with it. I think if you're looking at Nick and thinking, oh, no way, no how we can't draft him because we have Kyle Hamilton, I think that's a mistake because the Ravens aren't playing it like that. They'll get the best player available. If they think Nick is a great player, they'll find a way to make both of those guys work. We've seen it time and time again with the Ravens, and this time might be no different.
I think that, you know, safety is being overlooked by some because, oh, Kyle Hamilton's already there, and Darius is probably going to be back. But the reason that they were in that situation is because they had no depth behind them at all. No depth that they could trust. I mean, obviously Marcus Williams was great his first 2 years before his injuries. And then year three, he fell off a cliff and, you know, you couldn't do anything about it. You had to move off of him on the field. Eddie Jackson was a disaster both on and off the field. So you had to move on from him too. And the Ravens essentially, they didn't do it because they wanted to. They did it because they had to move Kyle Hamilton back deep. And what did that do? Like you said, Sam, they became one of the best defenses in the league. Everyone was talking about it. Their run defense is elite. It's historic. It's that pass defense. And then they made the changes and the defense stepped up. I think if you add another chess piece like Manwari, you can play Manwari back deep on some plays if you want to. But the big thing with him and Kyle Hamilton is it's a great problem to have if you have an elite talent like that, who, in my opinion, everybody's looking for that next Kyle Hamilton. Imagine if the Ravens have two of them. One of them, uber athletic. The other one, who is just Kyle Hamilton himself, who is one of the best safeties. In my opinion, he's the best safety in the NFL. So I like the pick personally. But for you, you mentioned you're a big Malachi Starks guy. First round is up. You have your pick. You know, obviously we're not going to put like Mason Graham and Travis Hunter in this conversation, but realistic options for Baltimore. You have everybody available. Who are you taking?
Man, it'll be very tough. It'll be very tough to pass Malachi Starks. So what you mentioned, I talked about this on your show throughout the season. The Ravens played three safeties a lot. They call it the big nickel package. So it's not like the Ravens are like, you know, going to keep, you know, these guys in the bench over there in the sidelines. They're going to play their three safeties a lot. They'll have three corners a lot. You know, they'll have Kyle Hamilton or Nick or whoever playing that linebacker, corner, safety role, that hybrid role, and makes him so dangerous and versatile. So I love Malachi Starks. I like his game. I'll probably go him. But, man, the Ravens have a lot of needed offensive line as well. I've seen Zabel fall, the guy from San Diego State, fall in a lot of drafts. He'll be a great swing guy, very complimentary to Patrick McCary to come in and play that guard tackle role. He played tackle a little bit at San Diego. A lot of people have him as a guard center. But, you know, with Tyler Linderbaum, fifth-year option, maybe not available. Maybe he doesn't extend. Who knows? Having that guy that can play those positions, very valuable for the Ravens. So it's a great problem for the Ravens to have. You can't go wrong with anything. As long as you're not picking quarterback, I think you're pretty good in the first round with whoever you get because, again, the Ravens are going to take the best player available and they're going to make it work.
A lot of solid options. And again, this is a class that might not have the best star power at the top of it. Once you start getting into the teens, the 20s, and even all the way even down to the 90s, you're going to have guys that can contribute for you at a lot of different positions. Sam, I appreciate you as always. Thanks for hopping on. As always, tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
All right. Yeah, you can find me at Ravens Talk Podcast on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. We're talking about Ravens football, the draft all day long. We have a live stream coming next week for the draft. We'll be talking about it at all hours, probably until the Ravens get their selection at 27. And stick around because who knows? Last time people went to sleep and the Ravens traded up and got Lamar Jackson in 2018. So stick around to the end of day 1 and day 2 as well, because you never know what the Ravens have up their sleeve. So we'll be there for the entirety of the draft to talk about it. And hopefully you guys tune in.
Yeah, draft is always fun. It's always fun to go through each pick, see your division rivals are taking, and of course, when the Ravens are on the board, they'll surprise you sometimes, but sometimes they'll just make the obvious good pick. Kyle Hamilton is, again, one that comes to mind there. But Sam, appreciate you as always. Links to Sam's work in the description down below. Thank you to everybody for tuning in, watching, listening today to Locked On Ravens. Coming up, we'll take a 2-day break unless there's a crazy headline that comes out over the weekend. Then, of course, we'll be covering it here, but we'll be talking Ravens football. And then next week, we'll do our final mock draft Monday, and then we'll get into a ton of other draft content as well. So be sure to stay tuned for all that, and I'll see you right back here on Monday on Locked On Ravens.